Welcome to Hey Dad Podcast. Real dads, tough issues, and a genuine love for a fatherless generation.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Today's sponsor is Rise Church of La Habra. All views expressed today may or may not represent the church's views. I'd like to introduce Frank Lomelli to my left, and to his left, Chris Lawler. Thank you guys for being here today. Mm-hmm. The topic today is, what can a dad do to form their children? What works and what will make them hate you? Very important topic.
Yes.
And just to enter into this, I'd like to tell a story on my own brother and myself. We both had children at the same time. I jokingly would call my brother a suburban Amish. He is very into homeschool, and he only kept his family within the church Bible study family, very tight-knit group. And he is very strict. I one time had his boys over my house, and he got mad at me for showing him SpongeBob, which I did not understand, and I probably still don't, but that's okay. But I always wondered, who's raising our kids right? Am I doing it right? My philosophy's been different. My philosophy is more is caught than taught. I raised my children in the food ministry. My children distributed food, mixed with the community, served the homeless community, all the years growing up. And so I always had that thought in my mind, which one of us is doing this right?
The Flanders method or the organic method?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not coming from the thing that, I know he did it wrong and I'm right. I still don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah. But I do have a lot of thought on this opinion.
I got a sister in the same situation. Yeah. Her kids are freaking perfect. It's like they've been manufactured. And, she used to look at the way that I would raise my kids and kind of give me that squinting eye. Yeah. But I always thought, well, we'll see. We'll see. Well, now I've seen they've grown up, they're graduating, and they are awesome. I mean, the work is actually showing up. Where my kids are, saying that they're really raised right was kind of a loose term in our house, So I know I can't. It's hard to argue with the method. It's hard to argue with the fruit, even though I question the method.
That's the question. See, and all the kids I'm talking about from me and my brother's families, they're all grown now. And so, they're all great kids. My kids are beautiful, and his boys are really good boys. But they have challenges. And some of my kids are having more challenges than others. What I'm talking about as far as spiritually, but none of the kids are off the rails. Did we both do it right?
I'm listening to you guys because I'm trying to know how to come in here because, I have 3 sons from a previous marriage. They're men now. And since they were little, I had them in the church with me. Now, at the time that I had them in the church, I just came to the church, but they were raised in the church. And the thing is they had a single dad. I was left with my kids, and they had a single dad, and yet the dad was trying to do the right thing. But ultimately, I think my boys now, they don't talk to me. They're upset with me, and we haven't talked in years, but I do know what's going on with them. And, I praise God, there's no alcoholics, there's no drunks, there's no wife beaters, they're working class, they're smart boys. Does what I implemented into them as a father help them? I like to believe so, because they came from a broken home. They could have been worse. But I think most importantly, I think the church, having them in the church was a great move. Had I not put them in the church and just dealt with single dad type things, I think they would be pretty messed up.
Yeah.
So I don't think what I'm trying to say, I guess, is I don't think there's a right way that somebody could say, you got the formula. It's different DNA, different kids, different ways. And I think most importantly, man, I've heard parents that had their kids in the church and they turned out pretty bad.
But don't you hear also stories about people who just really cram scripture down the children's throats, force them into church, and then the children rebel against church?
You hear that a lot.
That happens too. Yeah.
You know, you can't really put a judgment on an entire raising like that was a bad way to do it, this is a good way to do it. It's really about components. You know, like the scripture says, look, talk about the Lord along the way. Talk about him when the sun rises, talk about when the sun sets. The idea is communicate to your children the things that they would not know from experience that you do know from experience in regards to walking with the Lord. But whether you make that, you know, the game is not going to be won by the volume or the accuracy of your words you string together, how many volumes you speak to them. The game's going to be won or lost by when they look at the way you run your life.
Right. You know, that's interesting because I always thought I never wanted to create a little holy huddle for my children to live in. I always thought that's not realistic. And I always considered us salt of the earth, the preservative of the earth. Mm-hmm. How are we a preservative if we're only hanging out with our little tight-knit church group? You know, but here's the other side of it. My children had friends who, you know, my children had friends who were gay. My children had friends who really had some horrific homes and may not have been the best influence on my kids. So how do you know, that was always something I wondered. I don't want to raise my kids in this Christian fishbowl, which are really no good to anyone except whoever's in the fishbowl with them, versus how do I keep the influence away from my children too?
This is a topic, man, that I'm living right now. I have teenagers. I have a daughter that just turned 20 and I have an 8-year-old. It's a really tough thing because God, first and foremost, is important. So important. But you got to understand is where were you with God when you were a dad? That's the tough part, man, because if you're trying to get through your mess and you had kids that are going through your mess with you, I don't care how much you talk about God as they grow up, they're watching you. How much of a hypocrite are you or are you practicing what you're saying? And you know what? One of the things that I've learned just in the past couple of years is, yes, God is very important, but I think God is so important in me first to be able to share that with them. And through that experience, I think the only thing they want is to be listened to. They just want to be heard. They just want to know that they matter to you. If you give them that dialogue, if you lend that ear to them, they become so different. Because now they feel, because they're always trying to fit in somewhere. Because they're always made to feel like they're too young. You don't know nothing. You won't understand till you have your own kids. I was told that by my kids.
Wait, by your kids?
Yes, I was told that. You know, you're always telling us that, you know, we come up with something and then you're telling me that, well, you don't understand until you're a dad, then you'll know. He goes, well, so I need to, and it made a lot of sense. So my son says, so I need to wait until then to know what I got to do. And I was like, whoa, man, you know, I never even thought about that.
Yeah,
but you know, Frank, I think that's interesting because when you mess up, I've always lived by this. I never had any problem going back to my kids and saying, man, I was just tired from work. And I'm sorry, I jumped on it. I thought that and I went off.
Well, brother, that's your superpower. Because not every dad has that ability.
But how valuable is it? Because as a child, you're listening and saying,
valuable.
Okay, my dad made a mistake and he's coming clean on it. You know,
it's like he says, how many men do that?
Right. It all falls in this category of how your kids are watching you.
Yeah.
They're not so much hearing every word you got to say, and they're not necessarily memorizing all the instructions you spill out. They're watching how you live your life. Do you love their mother? Are you fair at work?
Yeah.
Do you work hard? Do you take care of your responsibilities? Or do you showcase the type of a person that cuts the edges and always trying to cheat and get things that they don't deserve?
Yeah.
Because, you know, the irony is somebody once told me that, look, if you do a really great job modeling something for your kids, they'll grow up and be like you. But if you do a really bad job and totally ignore them, guess what? They're going to grow up and be like you. Because the common denominator is simply watching you. They're marinating in your presence as a man.
Yeah.
And if you're set there by God to be an example of leadership, how could they not be influenced by you?
Right.
Even if you use the old line, don't do what I do what I say, you know, it just doesn't hold any weight.
I think the main ingredient that has to be pulled out of the soup is pride.
Yeah.
If you run your home with pride, I mean, and it's crazy because you can be preaching about God in your home and you're a prideful man. They're not listening to what you're saying about the Lord. They're looking at your pride. And what does that do? It causes them to be youngsters with pride. And then what happens with that pride? That pride comes back and blows up in your face.
Right.
So first and foremost, the man of the house needs to get right with God from the very beginning, even before you have babies. But if you already have them when they're babies, you got to start working on yourself, man.
Really, you got to get right before God before you have that spark in your eye and looking at your wife.
What is that saying? I'm going to try to remember it, but sanity is...
Oh no, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again.
Expecting different results.
That's right.
The same thing over and over.
That's what we are when we're trying to tell our kids, teaching them and telling them, no, I know better because blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But who's talking? Is it God through you or is it your pride?
Right.
And they pick up on that stuff, especially nowadays. Kids nowadays, they're super smart. And they know when dad's blowing smoke. You can't do that anymore.
Now, I want to be a little easy with dads because... we're dads. We're talking to people that maybe they don't have such a great experience with their own father. And, sometimes the one thing a dad can always come off on is a big, fat know-it-all. We know how to do everything.
I wouldn't know what you're talking about, Chris. Sorry.
I'm going to raise my hand.
Imagine if your dad was Crocodile Dundee. This might be a dated reference from the 80s, but Paul Hogan, Shrimp on the Barbie, that guy. Okay, raised out in the Australian bush. And he's your dad, and he takes you out for the weekend, a camping trip. But he brings you out there, and he criticizes everything you're wearing because you're not wearing the right clothes. And then he points out every snake and gets it out of the way, and every poisonous bush or whatever is coming, and make sure that your pathway is totally easy, flat, and unobstructed to walk down. And then he gets to the camp, and he won't let you roll out your sleeping bag because you won't do it right. So he's going to do it for you. And he's also going to put the bait on the hook when you go fishing and then grab the reel from you if you get hooked up and bring it in because you might screw up and lose the fish.
Yeah.
Okay, what is a kid like that ever going to learn? What he's going to learn is, I hate being with my dad because he knows everything and he won't let me do anything.
I'm guilty.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's such an easy groove and here's why it's an easier groove to slide into. We do know everything. We've been there and done that. Yeah, it's like the body of experience in a full-grown man compared to what's a little child. How do we not pop the top and just pour out all of our experience, but go beyond that and remove every single obstacle so that your child can never discover the right way for themselves?
You know what? I was just thinking about what you said, and I never thought about this. Just hit me right now. Is how about if we were to sit down with their kids and say, you know what, I'm scared too.
Yeah.
Or you know what, I'm not sure if we're going to screw up, son, but let's try.
Yeah.
And I can say that now because, man, I've come a long ways and I've yet a ways to go. But I'm thinking what you're saying right now, I was one of those dads and my son, my oldest son, my first son, he can't stand me because he always felt like he had to compete with me. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't doing that on purpose. It's just that's the way I was. Well, not necessarily raised, but made to feel that I was supposed to be like. Right. But right now when you're saying that, I'm thinking, my God, man, what if I was to tell him, I am scared too? Because I'm 6'5", 265 pounds. My kids have always looked at me like I'm like this big dude, and they're like, Dad can do anything. But to be honest with you, I've been scared. I've been not sure, but I don't know why I feel like I couldn't show my kids that. Which, and if anything, that's the strength that they need is to know, hey, Dad's scared too, so that's all right.
When they see you being frightened about something or not confident about it, but you're rising up and doing it anyway, what you put on display is courage.
Yeah.
You don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
I have a handicapped son. He's autistic, and he has a gift of screwing up every plan we ever have. I mean, how many years has it been since I could bring him into church?
That's been an issue,
he'll blow up and go screaming at your wife. He did it. Yeah. Copy got the business into James one year.
And we love him, and that's okay.
I know, but that grace is superhuman too. But what my son James has established in our house is a saying: we don't have to succeed, but we do have to try. Huh. And what it is we reveal that we're not going to stop trying to live life because we know it's going to be hard and it's going to have unexpected obstacles. Right. we're going to proceed anyway, because that's what courage would do.
Yeah.
And that's what a dad can put on display for their children.
Yeah.
Not it doesn't come down to do it this way, do it that way. Here's the manual, memorize it.
Yeah.
It's about, do I want to be like my dad or not?
Yeah.
You know, if my dad was overbearing and he's a know-it-all and he won't listen to me, he's auditing me all the time, which I'm guilty of that too. Look how many words I'm spinning right now. My wife calls me, I'm a wordsmith. Okay, think of that image of a blacksmith working on a heavy anvil. Yeah. I'll just grab my daughter or my son, put them on the nail and hammer them with words.
Yeah,
bang,
you probably
bang.
Lost them after the second word.
Exactly.
That glazed over look in their
exactly.
But
you know, and the thing is,
work in your shop.
I'm trying so desperately to control their behavior.
Yeah.
Desperately control my behavior.
Yeah.
But you know, too, like what you guys are saying, we could even broaden the stakes of that tent. What about if you also admit, you know, I'm sorry, I lost my temper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm stressed. Yeah. I'm really stressed. People are so forgiving. Your children are so forgiving.
They love you.
You just got to be straight, though. It's okay. Like, man, I talked to your mom and I shouldn't have talked to her that way. I'm working on that. That's been a problem, you know? Or you know, I didn't even think about that. That wasn't even on my radar. I apologize. I mean, I think that means that's a lot. It's a lot to be human, to be real, but you touched on something in the beginning. Frank, you were saying, you got to get your life right with Christ.
You do.
You have to enter into let the Holy Spirit empower you, let the regeneration process happen in your life where Christ really reshapes you. Because a lot of us, we talked about this before, are carrying a lot of stuff from the past.
Yeah.
Right.
So either you learned wrong from your father, or you didn't have a father even to see any of this, and you don't know, and you're like, am I doing this right or wrong?
Right.
That's hopefully one of the aspects of this show. You can hear our thoughts on it and help shape your own if you didn't have that figure in your life, or if you learned it wrong.
Right.
You know,
and this is not to say that you have to be a perfect example of a Christian, because we're not.
No.
You know, so saying that we have to get our lives right before the Lord, that's not to say that we have to be spotless and polished and without imperfection and show that to our, because that's another way of hammering them with something that's impossible for them to ever live up to in their minds.
I think what it is what I meant by that was know that you're not perfect. Know that you're not going to get everything right. Mm-hmm. But know that God is love. And a lot of us, I'm old school. I was raised really hard. Love was, I can't say the word on this, I can't say what I want to say here, but love is for wusses. You know, love, you don't hug man, you don't cry, that kind of thing, because that's weakness. And I carried that throughout. Mm-hmm. And when I came to the Lord, man, I couldn't understand, like, what? Like, you're supposed to, like, hug men and tell them that you love them, and that doesn't make you gay? You know what? That was foreign to me. You know, so
it's
here
a very
I am.
cultural statement right there.
Well, you know, the thing is that's, I mean, I'm saying that, and it's always perceived as something so horrible that you can't, you know, even mention that. And if you do mention it, it's so damaging.
It's true.
And so what I'm trying to say is that I understand now the way things are now, and I don't want to get into the gay conversation, but I don't feel about it like I used to, because I was made to feel a certain way that they were awful and bad people, which they're not. They're my brothers and sisters, and we are to love them. Mm-hmm. But that's not the conversation. What it is that I had this mental scripted tablet in my head that said, that's what you're going to pass on to your kids, because the men need to be men. We didn't even talk about the girls. It was just basically the boys, you know, and the girls, the only thing you gave them, your daughters, were, well, I'm doing this because I'm going to protect you because I don't want anybody to hurt. You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's just, I think that what you have to do is you have to really look at yourself and learn to be able to love. What does love mean is, I think first and foremost, and the biggest thing that has been in my life, in the way, the elephant in the room is pride. Pride has gotten in the way of everything with my wife, kids, with me doing business. And when I started to remove that, and pride keeps, again, like you said, pride's going to kick in, but at least when you understand how damaging pride is and what pride causes you to do other than what you're supposed to do, at least you have an understanding, and then you begin to know, like, man, I really got to cut that out.
But you know what? Yeah. What's a really useful thing to do with your kids and with your wife is to have that moment of revelation with them. Tell them, look, at any time, I can fill right up with pride, and then I can't find my way out from it. So I'm apologizing in advance that I'm going to step on you. I'm going to humiliate you. I'm going to force my will upon you because my pride is a tiger that I can only barely control.
Yeah. But be prepared. They may use it against you. When you're at your worst, Dad, you're being prideful. Like
anything you say can and will be used against you.
They have the weapon to kill
the
pride.
fire. Yeah. I don't know.
Let's flip this question on the back end of it.
Okay.
How do we make our kids hate us?
Oh my gosh.
How does a child grow to hate their own father?
I think
I guess how do you make them not hate us, right? I mean, the advice to not.
Let's think of the things that they really despise about fathers.
I'm Mr. Know-it-all.
Know-it-all.
Yeah.
I've been told that.
Of course, it's when the pride's on display.
Yeah.
They really can't stand that.
Yeah.
When you do everything for them and make them feel like they're completely incompetent.
Yeah.
You know, that makes them
Yes.
like, I just want to get out of your shadow as fast as I possibly can.
Yeah, I guess they feel like, what is the point? You know everything.
Right.
So.
And when we shoot down all of their questioning ideas, questioning thoughts, like we're at a skeet shoot, yeah, let's talk with your daughter. First, let me say pull, then put your stupid idea out in the air, and I'll blow it out of the sky.
Exactly.
Okay, they're going to hate that if they never feel like they can talk, and they're working these things out themselves.
Right.
That makes them despise a father.
Yeah.
You know, I think you touched on something. Just recently, my son, who's the engineer of this program, he has a studio, and we're working on what he calls sound clouds, right? These boxes that absorb sound off the ceiling. And he had an idea how to build it. Right away, I knew how to build the box. I knew I'm going to glue the joints. I'm going to do this. I'm going to reinforce this.
Of course you do.
And he had a
right on, brother.
I know. And you know I'm right. But he had a different idea. Oh, he had a lighter way, simpler way of doing it. And I can't tell you, 4 times during this one-day project, I had to pull my ponies back and say, wait, son, you're leading this project. I'll do it any way you tell me.
Yeah.
Hard.
It is hard.
Hard to do.
Hard.
But the hard is what makes it great.
I know. Yeah,
That's
you're
what
right.
makes it a hero's move.
You're right. And you know, the funny thing is, I was right, but he was also right.
Yeah.
A lighter frame
can
hanging
you
from a ceiling is a better thing. You know?
Can you imagine if you were my son and I'm a contractor / artist / car builder?
Oh, brother.
I wouldn't come to you. I would stay away from you, honestly.
My son is like, I don't even want to ask that question.
Really, like being son of Superman.
Yeah.
You know? Wow.
And I tried to drill that in him. It's like, dude, you got to get some stuff under your belt because if you don't, you never know. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but how's he going to get anything under his belt?
Oh my God, I haven't even started to wear a belt yet.
This is how my dad taught me how to sweep. He was a floor installation guy, right? And I would go out and work with him when I was a little kid. So he'd give me tasks that were within our framework. And one of them was sweep this floor because we're going to put linoleum on it. So I would sweep it. Then he'd come check it and he'd say, no, it's not swept up enough. He'd sweep himself and get a whole bunch of other stuff. Sweep it. Get down on your knees. So I get down on my knees and I sweep every inch of this floor and get it into this pan. Then I call him to come check at it. He goes down and he starts sweeping and he swept up a whole bunch of other stuff.
Again, yeah.
Like, what is happening? And the third time this happened, he came and I noticed he had stuff in his hand. And he was sprinkling it ahead of him and then sweeping it into the pan just to blow my mind. Okay. And I looked at him. I said, you got stuff in your hand. You know what? He looked at me like this. They dropped everything and ran. And I ran out and I tackled him in the front lawn. And we rolled in the grass just laughing. And this was my dad's way of saying, look, you need to own the result of what you're doing. Yeah. So that has to be your investment there. I made it purposely hard so that you would press past where you think your limits are. Yeah. And you would get it done.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if my dad would consider himself a smart man, but I think that is a smart move. And I've used that gambit on my own kids.
That's funny. How do you navigate around that, though? You know, like, my gosh. Oh, that's funny.
Let me try to get the broom on my kids' hands these days. It's not even about that. Can you sweep? Oh, why do I have to do that?
Exactly. Right. That's very hard. My kids, I'd call them out to help me, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, boys, you need to learn how to turn a screw and use a drill, and they were like, how much longer? Okay, and they would do the minimum, and then they're gone. I'm like, and now they're both men of their own homes, and I see them like learning this. I'm like, you could have learned a little faster if you would have watched me.
Well, now the tails turn when I go to them. with my phone. I don't know how to get this phone to work. Can you help me? And
I hate doing that.
Yeah.
I feel so dumb.
All right, Dad, come on. Give me the phone.
My daughter told me, really? Because I had an Apple phone from work, and it's the first time I ever had one. She goes, really? You don't know how to do it? It's one little switch on the side. And
how stupid can you be? How stupid do you want to be today, Dad?
Pretty dumb, actually.
I take the phone apart, put it back together to make sure I cover all ends, and then I say, okay, you know what? This is really hard. Done.
I know.
I'm like,
drives me nuts.
I feel dumb right now.
Drives me nuts. Yeah. So let's go back. Let's get back on track here. How do we avoid, if we're to summarize this into bullet points, how do we make sure our children don't grow up resenting us? See, and the sad thing is that's us trying.
Yeah.
And we'll try them into hating us.
Right.
But at least, I mean, we are trying. Our heartfelt thing is to teach them, love them, prepare them. But how do we do it? I mean,
well, I'll tell you one, there's no guarantee you're going to get that job done because they are their own people. And your daughter and your son will grow up and they will find ways to resent you, even if they don't have to create them out of broadcloth, because it's all part of them growing up and putting off their childhood. There comes a point in every kid's life where they have to stop leasing their faith from their parents and they have to buy their own faith.
Yeah.
And they got to pay full price, just like every other person ever did. And that's having that confrontational moment where you surrender everything to Jesus. So in my mind, the number one thing is make sure you do that as a father first, so that you have that authentic relationship with the Lord where the battles that are going on inside of you, both the battles of pride and the battles of success, are on display to your kids. So they can see what an authentic man looks like when he's walking with the Lord, trying to deal with everything in life. If you can show that, that will put a lot of grace on the table for the kids to understand you when you start screwing up and making bad moves.
but the things I'm pulling away from this conversation are, one, be authentic with them, be honest and vulnerable with them, admit mistakes, go back, give them space to do things their way, respect their ways, don't break them down, don't be heavy-handed on trying to do it our way, or the way we know it's best.
I think another one is stop being the professor and jump in and be a student with them.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I did with this project I was talking about. This is very recent. I said, I'm just your carpenter. Tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
I kept having to slap my own hand, though. No, let's grab this one. No, let's do this. And my poor son just tolerated me. But in the end, I finally got in the groove by the fourth try. So hopefully,
you learned with them.
Yeah. Because honestly, I know your guys' hearts. I know my heart. Man, we're trying. We love our kids, and we're trying. We know everyone out there loves their children, and they're trying. But glean what you can from this conversation, because your kids are important. Authenticity, love, give your kids respect and space.
Humor. Lace a lot of humor in there.
They want dialogue.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what they want.
And my hat's off to men who are just engaged in the process. A lot of men take off. They're not engaged, or they're there, but they're not.
Yeah. They didn't see that work coming.
Yeah.
And then the job comes before them. They say, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this.
Right.
All I was interested in was a booty call. And now I got this kid I got to deal with? What in the world?
Well, once again, all the views aren't representative of the church's views on this issue. Let me restate that for Chris's comments. Okay, guys, we're going to close there. Chris, if you can close us in prayer for everyone out there.
Oh, man, Lord, thank you so much that you've given us this privilege to impart onto a younger generation the things that we've gone through in our experience. Father, I pray that grace and mercy would be upon every father and every son, every daughter, that they could work out this relationship and see each other with a lot of grace.
Yes.
See the woundedness and the humanness of each other. And we would resist pride and allow the Lord to just flow right through. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name.
Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.